Alrighty then, here is the back end of the Nieuport. I have completed the tails by putting on, oh yeah, I thinned that out. It looks much, much better. Looked like a frying pan before. I rigged it, put on the control horns, rigged it with my wire. I think my easy line, I used thick. I think it's a little bit too thick, but we're going with it. I recolored, oh, and I put on the tail skid, which I didn't show, but it was just absolutely simple to do. But you can see the wire, the control lines go right up through the tail, which looks great. And I tried to, I had to paint some of the little edging, and I did. You can see I messed up a little bit on the bottom, but it's on the bottom. I won't mind some of that light blue, but it looks really good. It's all, the back end is all done, and certainly looks like a Nieuport. It's going to be really pretty. Like I said, I'm glad I fixed the rudder, because the rudder was way too thick. Now I'm going to do the cockpit area, put the windshield on there, and put the cockpit coaming on, which has to go on there. So that'll help finish off most of the fuselage, and it'll be ready like for the wings. The MiG, I started putting on these back accoutrements. There's no rigging, but there's other things to add. That is a fin that goes in the bottom, and boy, did I blow that. I glued it together flat, and it's not supposed to be. And you can see I tried to pull it apart. Now it's wavy and stupid. That's me trying to make a thumbs down. That's operator error. Then there's a bunch of other little accoutrements. Now these are not easy to put together. They're hard to film, but it's a cone, and the green cone, and then you put it around this other piece. And you just have to be very carefully form these with something round, even a pencil. And these are tiny. These have a little point on the end of them. I ended up forming those around a toothpick. But these are things, I don't know what they're for, but they go on the edge of the stabilizer and part of the rudder fin and fuselage base. So they fit well, though, I got to say, once they're together. Putting them together took a good long while. And they have different sides. One's a rounder and one's a sharper cutout. So I assume that, for instance, the sharp cutout goes on the top on this particular part. So I slide that in there, glue it in place, and you just make sure it's straight. It's not hard to do. It fits well. No big issues at all. And it looks good. I don't know what that thing is. If anybody knows, please let me in on the secret, because I have no idea what that is at all. Making sure that it's tight and that it's kind of glued in place. These things, when you put them on, when it's all done, it really does add a lot. It looks pretty cool, actually. I like it. It looks better than I remember. But I don't know what they're for, unless they're just things that are holding on. I mean, there's control actuator mechanisms or something in there, and then those things are there to streamline them. I don't know. This one goes at the base of the fin and rudder. It's bigger, and it fits really well. Again, a little bit of glue, and it's got a top and a bottom, it looks like, based on the cutout. Again, being sharp or round. And this thinner one I put near the top. And that just slides right in, and that one fits kind of like a puzzle piece. It fit really, really well. And then I just made sure that it's straight, and then I kind of went around the edges and made sure that it glued in place. I realized, looking at this now, I did not take off the silver coloring. Because I'm not going to handle the model much, I think I'll be okay, and these will dry and glue enough. I think if I wrap it accidentally, they'll probably come off easily. But I'm not sure how to do it the right way in a situation like this, because it doesn't fit. It fits very well, but to know what parts to remove of the aluminum is a hard deal. Then this bottom piece was put on, and it's small enough that it could fit just butt joint on there. There's nothing inside. There's no former. There's no nothing. And I'm just making it so that it fits along the contour of the body. The body has a slight diagonal step in it, and the part actually fits that pretty well. But it's all wavy because I, again, put it together and then had to pull it apart. So it looks pretty lousy. But again, I guess I'm learning as I go. And then these are the two parts that go on the tips of the stabilizers. Again, I don't know what they're for. There's some kind of pitot tube, or I don't know what they're for. And I've made them, since they're rolled and there's a seam on them, I've made them so the seam should go towards the inside, which I assume would make sense from a modeling standpoint. I don't know if that's the truth, but that's what I did. stuck them on there, because to me, part of the foot part on there that connects to the stabilizer, or the whole full flying elevator there, almost looks like it should be the other way, but I just went with it because I got no other directions to tell me otherwise. Anyway, but that's the back end, and with all those little green Christmas lights on there, and either the red stars or the Polish checker box, it's looking kind of Christmassy. It's kind of nice. And here are the two tails. Again, you don't rig the MiG, but you do other stuff with the MiG tail to get them finished. So it's interesting how both of them are, in parallel. So now I decided to finish part of the fuselage of the Nieuport, because I do have the canopy done on the MiG, so I'll do the canopy on the Nieuport. It's much simpler, but you still got to be careful. First thing I did, this is like the windshield area. First thing I did was cut out the center where the clear is going to go. So I just very carefully cut this out. I'm showing this a little bit. I speed up later, I think, but it's just to show you that you do have to take your time. I sort of cut around the edges and poke those out and make them to curve. And then once I got those, then I go ahead and do the rest of it. And I pick those out, both sides. Again, there I am going to the edges first, carefully, and then go ahead and do this. And by the way, I'm wearing my magnifying lenses when I'm doing this. It is easier, I think, to do that. And then this is supposed to be, well, on a regular Nieuport that's not painted or something, it would be aluminum. So I painted those insides aluminum just to have it look good. And here you're very carefully going through and very carefully pulling these apart. Speed it up again just so you won't fall completely asleep on this Christmas Eve. But you just take your time and pull this apart and make sure all the edges are nice. And then I've already made my bend in the middle, or already made a place to a crease. And now I'm just checking to make sure it does indeed fold over and it matches up pretty well. So all I got to do is trap a piece of clear in between, which is going to be that piece of overhead transparency film that I've been using. I got one sheet and it's lasted me many years. And there's the pattern for it. And it turns out that pattern, I'm checking it here, but that pattern is just slightly larger than the hole, which is perfect because you just want it a little bit bigger so it'll glue and stay. So I go ahead and take my transparency, put my pattern for the windshield, and I just taped it down with some Tamiya tape, and I can see through it, and I just cut directly through this. This keeps it in place. I'm cutting through the layers, so I'm hopefully cutting into the clear plastic as well, and pulling this thing out, and there it's coming out carefully. And then once it's out, then I'm going to glue it in place and then sandwich it, and it should give me a nice little windscreen. This airplane, by the way, the Nieuport, it's a very small airplane. It was called Beeb or BB or Bebi. I don't know how you say it in French, but it's Nieuport Baby, Nieuport 11, and it is very small. So this windshield looks big when you put it on the airplane, but the whole airplane was tiny. There I'm dropping very carefully the clear piece in, and because you don't want the glue to squish out, so I've put in a very thin layer of super glue in there, nothing overwrought, because you don't want it to squeeze in. And you let it dry for a little bit. Don't rush it. Just let it go. And I didn't want to put the zip kicker on this because that makes it rock hard. I wanted to sort of go ahead and fold the pieces down. So now I'm taking my white glue and I'm making my very thin layer around there. You also don't want the white glue to go off into the clear component. It'll dry clear, but it'll still look like a blob. So very carefully fold this over. And because the super glue is drying, but it's not rock hard yet, the next step I'll be able to do, and again, that's why I didn't really use zip kicker on this. I just want to just leave it alone because I have to now bend this to shape and fit around the cockpit edging, essentially, on that front piece. So I put this together with the white glue, make sure it's even. I'll color around the edges with my aluminum colored Sharpie, and we'll be on our way. And while this is drying, I'll go ahead and put the cockpit coaming on, which fits very nicely right over there. I've cut that out carefully, and I colored the inside and outside ring brown edging. And now you got to take this and shape it a little bit so that it'll fit in there nice. In this case, on the back end of a nice fat brush handle, seems to roll it pretty nice. And you just do it by eye, and it's close enough. Now it's easier to fit. Now when you put it on there, it almost fits just by itself. And you just kind of are going to put glue on it, and I'm test fitting it now to make sure it looks okay. So you put a thin layer of your white glue around the outside edge, very carefully. This time I am using another implement, not just the tip of the glue bottle, because this is very, very delicate. And then you just place it, and you just kind of carefully put it down, make sure it's even. The hardest part with these is when you put them in, you got to make sure it spans the whole opening. You can make it look really good, and then suddenly you realize, oh man, I'm off by a 72nd of an inch on one side, and now I've got a gap. So you just got to sort of put it down before the glue really takes, move it around a little bit, and it'll move on its own a little bit there, here and there. And once you get it so that it's touching all the edges, there it is. Looks pretty good. Now, there's that line on the front there that shows where this is supposed to, the canopy or the windscreen is supposed to go. To my mind, that would have been something that would really kind of mess up your view forward, but that's me. There I'm drawing the little line that's already on the model just to make sure that's what the center is, so I can see it. And then I go ahead and put this on. Now I have to form it because it has to curl around. And based on the plans, it's sort of straight there, and then it starts to really curve and bend right about where I'm putting that pair of tweezers and holding it in place. And so this has to be curved, so I take a round thing, in this case a piece of brass, and I roll it over that piece of brass, just like you're rolling, gift wrapping ribbon with a pair of scissors. Roll it up like that, and it will curve, and it will make a nice little shape. And like that isn't enough, but you keep doing that until you get it just right. So you test fit it, and you go, it's getting there. So you go back and you roll it some more, because what you don't want to do is get kinks in it. So you have to be careful. And once you do that a few times, you'll end up with a nice curve that you can then fit in there. And see, now I know that it's going to work. And what I tend to do is over curl it, because then when you undo it, it'll basically spring into place, or very close to it. So that looks like that's going to fit. I'm not going to have too many ugly gaps. If there are gaps, I can fill them with the white glue, and it will actually look pretty good. But you want to get it as close as you can, of course. Neatness counts, details and all that. Just like Neil always says on his models, the details are the important part. They really do make your model sort of come alive. So you put this together and put it down, and in my case, I wasn't quite centered, but I won't tell anybody. Once it was all dry, I realized, uh-oh, but I wasn't going to pull it off again, and it's going to be okay. No one's going to stare at it continuously. So anyway, that goes on there, and I'm just pushing it and making sure that it looks good, and making sure that the edge of that rolls around the cockpit so that it looks nice. And I can pick it up individually and curl it a little extra once things start to dry, and use my thumb and my fingers to sort of kind of press it into place and make sure it's where I want it. It's getting good there and looking pretty nice. And here's where I'm discovering it isn't quite centered, but then I'm pretending I didn't see that. It's not off by a huge amount, but you can see overall it really looks cool, but it looks big. But that's what it's supposed to look like. There it is. And so it's looking pretty nice. I really like the Nieuport, and the colors are so pretty on it in these markings. So looking great.